What's up, guys? I sat down for a morning meeting today with my academy mate and longtime friend, Kris VanLeeuwen. He's got a 4-step method for success on his path towards financial independence. He started as somebody not paying attention to finances at all to somebody who's now out there just crushing his goals. Hope you guys enjoy it. All right, hey Kris, thanks for meeting me here in the bullpen today for our morning meeting. How's it going?
I'm doing good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm good, man. Excited to get you on here. I know you got a lot of great information to share with the guys and girls out there looking to learn more about financial education, and excited to just sit down here and chat with you for a little bit.
Yeah.
What's been going on in your life? How are you managing the virus, the corona virus?
It's interesting, having to kind of take a little step back at work. I like to be helpful when I can on calls, and so now having just one guy go in and do all the work in a lot of the cases is kind of weird. But I guess it's overall for the best, having the least amount of exposure as possible. And then at home, we're very fortunate my wife works for the Red Cross, and so she's able to work from home right now. So really lucky to have that. And
Awesome.
Yeah, just kind of a bummer not to be able to see friends and family, obviously, but thankfully we have Zoom platform to be able to still connect in other ways.
Yeah, boy, this is it's forced everybody to kind of adjust and adapt, probably in a lot of good ways. And I think the way we do things is going to be forever changed. I don't think we can go back to where we were before. Just my opinion, but I guess time will tell. Definitely a interesting time to be alive. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. You ready to get this thing started?
Let's do it.
All right. So here's your first alarm. First alarm is going to be 4 questions and 1 piece of advice. Typically in our first alarm assignments, we have 4 engines in a truck. So we do it a little bit differently. 4 questions and 1 piece of advice. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. Well, you're first in. So your first in is a size up. Who you are, where you work, how long you've been on.
Yeah. So like you said, Kris VanLeeuwen, for those who don't know me. I'm an engineer at Station 11 on B Division, and I don't know, Carl, how long have we been on? 13 years?
13 years, yeah, we're academy mates. 67, now or never. Now or whenever.
Now or never.
Yeah, I guess about 13 years.
Yeah.
Time flies.
Crazy.
Cool. Well, good. As far as your investment experience, as far as your financial background, what can you tell us?
Well, in keeping with the theme of the fire service, as far as investment experience and financial knowledge, I would say that I am a probie. I've only actually been kind of paying attention, unfortunately, for the last year. So I think you and myself and probably lots of other people on the job, when they first came on, made their way through Station 40 and worked with Benson Perez.
Yes, exactly.
And I can vividly remember at the morning meeting him having you stand up and raise your right hand, and he says, "Repeat after me. Deferred comp, 401k, and don't date on the job."
And the most important one. Don't date on the job. That's right.
So I eventually started listening to 2 pieces of that advice. I'll let you guess which one I never ended up doing.
Yeah, that's true.
But I don't know, like I was young and I had other priorities in mind. And so the words I never really looked into what it meant to do that, because, I had a pension and I was like, oh, that'll be fine for my retirement. I don't really need to be doing that stuff.
Right.
So I've always been kind of naturally a saver. And so when I did spend money when I was younger, it would be, and even now would be on things like traveling, for example, or saving up money to buy a house and things like that. So
okay.
Nevertheless, I've always had some money in the bank. I've always kind of had the idea that, man, I need to I really should be doing something intelligent with my money, but I never made it a point to actually figure out what that was.
Well, it is important. It's important to play good defense, right? It's important to save and not blow money on things that aren't assets, things that are just liabilities or just wasting it on frivolous stuff. So the fact that you've played good defense sets you out on a good path. And whether that was because of the conversation you had with Benson all those years ago or just the way that you were raised, those are important things. Those are important principles that never die, right?
Yeah, for sure. But
you mentioned,
nevertheless,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, nevertheless, had I known now, or had I known then what I know now, things would be pretty awesome. Having, if I started shuffling even a little bit of money away into my deferred comp and 401k at the age of 25 in 2007. But hey, it's all good. No shame, no blame, right?
Hindsight being 2020, man, I feel like I could fill up a month worth of these sort of shows just on mistakes that I've made, either through negligence or ignorance or just being apathetic towards it all, feeling like, hey, we're blue collar people and we have a pension and that's good enough. But
right.
I think I just realized, if I can just pay attention a little bit and I can go step by step, then I can achieve some of the goals that are important to me, that allow the sort of lifestyle that I want to have for my family. I think
right.
that's important. And guys like Benson back in the day, sitting you down was a really important thing. And I feel like that went away a little bit with that generation of firefighter. And so that's actually why I started the Facebook group in the first place, was to have that dialogue again, so that people coming up behind us wouldn't spend 10 years not knowing how to do anything and then wake up
right.
one day and think, oh my gosh, I wish I would have done this back in the day. So hopefully it kind of carries on that legacy that the old timers gave us back in the day.
Yeah.
You sort of mentioned something that struck a chord, which I think is really important. You say you feel like you're still a probie when it comes to financial education. I actually really like that approach, man, because that's like the beginner's mindset, right? Where you're constantly curious and you're always trying to learn new things. I think that's a really important approach. And I hope I never get to the point where I feel like I've learned everything there is to learn,
right,
in this or anything else, really. What do you think?
I think that's a perfect way to go about it. Absolutely. Because when you take that approach, you just open yourself up to so many more opportunities and learning experiences, so.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So you mentioned Benson back in the day, kind
of
mentioned things to you. Then fast forward to today. Now, what are you doing?
So when I say a year, so actually something happened a year ago that made me start paying attention to my finances. So I was on the rig, I was driving, working for a really smart captain, and this nice brand new lifted Chevy Silverado went driving by, and for whatever
San Diego City Fire sticker on the back, no doubt.
No, it was just a random truck.
Okay.
But so it made him think of an article that he had recently read, which was titled "The True Cost of Car Ownership," and he mentioned that the author of this article was this guy who was part of the FIRE movement, and I didn't know what that was, and so I asked, well, what is that? He said, oh, it stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And that was it. But I was curious about this acronym FIRE, so later that night, I went home and did a Google search, and lo and behold, come across an article by who else? Mr. Money Mustache. The entry point for many people when it comes to learning about this stuff. And I read an article about the simple math behind early retirement, and
yeah, that's mind-boggling.
Mind blown, yeah.
mind blowing, right? I'll link to it in the notes so that people can access that, because it really is what makes it so cool is just how easy it is, right? Or just how simple the math actually is when you break it down.
Yeah. So that led me on, like, man, I started reading books and listening to podcasts and, audiobooks, and just, I started devouring the information and trying to learn as much as I could about, as many different things as I could. And so from that point, I started looking at my own finances and making a lot of changes and things like that. So things that I changed, well, I looked at, okay, I know that I am contributing to deferred comp, but I don't know what it's in, and I don't know anything about, like, what are stocks, what are bonds, what's an index fund, what's an expense ratio. So I read a lot about that stuff. Found out that I was in a target date retirement fund,
Okay.
which tend to have higher fees, and so I opted, you know what,
Can you just explain what a target date fund is for people that don't know?
Yeah, basically you can pick individual stocks, say like Apple or Google or something like that, or you can invest in an index fund. So, for example, we'll use just Vanguard, for example, and they have broad-based index funds, which means that it will have your money allocated into basically the entire stock market, large cap, mid cap, small cap.
Like VTSAX, for example?
Yeah, VTSAX, or the S&P 500, for example, which is the 500 largest companies in the United States. And the beauty about investing in an index fund is that you're not in one particular company, and it's what they call like a self-cleansing process. So let's say one of those companies goes out of business, well, then it will just be replaced by another company, and you're not actually losing money when that company goes out of business. Index funds also tend to have very low expense ratios, meaning the cost to be invested in that fund. And so when the expense ratio is low, it means that you're able to accumulate more money over time, and you get to use that compound interest to your advantage.
Yeah, that's the beauty of the index funds, and particularly through Vanguard, is, again, it's a great way of playing good defense while trying to build up your portfolio for the long term, right? The difference between stock market trading or index fund investing is, with the trading, you're going in and out of the market, maybe trying to time some lows there, time some highs, whereas the index fund investing is longer term, utilizing the power of compounding or compounding.
Right.
Do I have that right?
Sounds right to me.
Cool, man. So going back from 2006, when you were sitting there at the table at 40s, till today, on the path to FIRE, financial independence, retiring early, what do you think has been the biggest difference? What has been sort of the mindset shift? Was it that conversation you had with the captain, or was it something that happened in your own life, or what got you down the path?
That's a good question. So for me, it was kind of just learning about, well, okay, so I guess this goes into the question, why am I passionate about this concept of financial independence?
Yeah, exactly.
So for me, I'm not so much, so obviously FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. I'm not so much interested in the retire early part of that.
Well, that's inevitable, right? Because of the line of work we're in. We're going to retire.
True.
General population.
But I guess when you look at like some of these people, retiring in their 30s, like that has no. Anyways, I'm not interested in the extreme early retirement, right? Yeah. I guess you're right. By conventional measures, we do retire early compared to most Americans. Very true. Nevertheless, the part that really interested me was the financial independence aspect. And the reason that it interested me is because I found that in the reading that I was doing and in just the research that I was doing, it made me ask what I considered to be the right questions. Because I was essentially beginning with the end in mind. So if I were to fast forward and think to the day that, okay, I'm now financially independent. I do not have to work in order to pay my bills and do the things that I want to do in life. So then you have to ask the question, okay, well, what would I do if that were the case? Like, how would I spend my time? And what would I do with my life? So then you ask yourself questions like, what makes me happy? What are my values? What am I passionate about? Essentially, you're asking, what matters in life to me? So now that you have pondered on these questions and you have, maybe answers to these questions, now you can kind of come back to right now, today, and you can ask yourself, how am I utilizing my resources right now in order to get me to that place that I want to be? And when I say resources, I mean your thoughts, your time, and your money. So in other words, is my spending in alignment with my values? And so, I mean, these are, kind of deep questions, but they're good questions to ask, because it's so easy to just mindlessly spend money on random things. And then you ask yourself, well, man, I don't have enough money to invest or to save or to whatever. And it's like, well, do you not? Like, and maybe you don't, but nevertheless, for me, was a big thing, was aligning my actions with my values. And an even bigger piece for me to that is that if you can say that your thoughts, your time, and your money are in alignment with your values, then to me, that's living a life of integrity. And to me, that's huge. So
that's great. I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people. And the fact that you are starting with the end in mind, and then going to be able to go step by step backwards and reverse engineer it to where you're sitting right now. It puts things in perspective, and it makes you know that as long as you go step by step, as long as you are intentional with what you do with that goal in mind, then a lot of this stuff becomes really digestible in small pieces that you can take action on. And so anytime I hear that, I just love that and think that it's absolutely right on the money.
Right.
So with all that being said, if I was looking for more information on this stuff, if I wanted to further my education, if I wanted a piece of advice, what would you tell me?
A piece of advice. Well, because a lot of this is a learning process, I think that kind of like what you touched on earlier, how you said you appreciated how I said that I felt like I was a probie in all of this. When you're a probie, what do you need to do? You need to learn as much as you can, right? Or in other words, this would be my piece of advice, would be to seek wisdom. And I see that seeking wisdom can be made possible by 4 things. Start by being humble. When you start from a place of humility, you see every person that you encounter as your teacher. You see every experience as, something new for you to learn, and you just realize how little you actually know. And so that just opens you up to receiving new information and new knowledge. Number 2, be curious. When I think of the word curiosity, I think of like a child, and what does a child do? They interact in the world and they just soak everything in, and they just want to know everything about everything.
It's that beginner's mindset, right? The probie you were talking about earlier.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. I mean, my niece Mia, she just turned 9 years old today. Happy birthday, Mia. She's read 100 books, and she's probably over 100 by now, and she's 9 years old. I'm 38 years old, and I haven't read 100 books.
Yeah.
So like having this mindset of like curiosity and actually wanting and being hungry for knowledge is invaluable. Number 3, set goals. It's nice to have something to strive for. A lot of firefighters are type A people, and they need to be driven and work towards something. And so setting goals, short, midterm, and long-term goals, I think is very important. And stretch yourself with your goals. Like if you are operating at the fringes of your capability, well, that's where growth occurs. And so if you don't set goals that are a little bit out of your reach, then you're not pushing yourself enough.
No growth in the comfort zone, right?
Very true. And lastly, take action. I like what you wrote on your Facebook post about, if knowledge were enough, then we'd all have six-pack abs and be millionaires, right?
Yeah.
So, man, with all this stuff, you gotta take action, and then it becomes a cycle. You act with humility. You're curious about things. You obtain knowledge, and then by making a plan and taking action, then you gain experience. And with knowledge and experience over time, you gain wisdom. And you and Paul talked about how your favorite book, or one of your favorite books, was the Richest Man in Babylon.
Yeah, Paul.
And in that book, it talks about how wisdom is more valuable than gold. So there you go.
Well, you hit the nail on the head with that one, man. And with that, looks like you got knocked down on your first alarm. So is there anything else you want to add, or if people want to get in touch with you, how can they find out more about you?
You can find me on Facebook or Instagram. My Instagram handle is FIREhouse. So
that's a hard one to spell. So
yeah, common spelling.
By the way, speaking of interesting names, did you have a nickname on the fire department, or did you always just go by?
I did, yeah. It's funny you should mention that.
Fire department, we like giving everybody names. So, is there one for you, or?
Yeah, I would be Party Boy.
Party Boy. We'll look for Party Boy on Instagram and Facebook, or your actual handles.
Sounds good.
Right on. Well, hey, Kris, thanks for meeting me today. Really appreciate it. You gave us a lot of advice on things that we can do to get on the path. And just looking at that map behind you, I think that if people are going step by step through all this, and especially if you do, which it sounds like you will, I would expect to see a lot more thumbtacks on that thing in the near future.
Thanks for having me, Kyle. Appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy. All right. Thanks again to Kris Party Boy VanLeeuwen for joining me today for a morning meeting. I love his 4-step approach on his path towards financial independence. He's humble. He tries to learn everything he can from everybody he comes across. He stays curious with that beginner's mindset, or like he says, he feels like a probie along this path. He sets goals with the end in mind, and then he takes action going step by step towards those goals. Now that's applicable whether it's on your path towards financial independence, whether it's your job as a firefighter, or really any facet of life. If you want to learn more about Kris, he's on Facebook, Christopher VanLeeuwen, that's Kris with a K. He's on Instagram at Christo FranzLeeuwen. Those are both linked in the show notes. If you want to follow us, we're on Facebook at the FIREhouse, that's F.I.R.E.house. On Instagram, the _fire_house, or on LinkedIn, the FIREhouse Investors. That's all caps fire, lowercase house investors. If you like this morning meeting and you want to see more, please like, share, and subscribe. But no matter what you do, take this information, go out there, and get some. Station F.